Chapter 71, A Disastrous Defeat, and the Son of God Personally Conquered It? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Surrounded by a retinue of divine ministers, Kong Wudao arrived at the Imperial city of the Sun and Moon dynasty, like a moon surrounded by stars. The city bristled with Sun and Moon dynasty troops patrolling the skies, especially around the Imperial palace. There, countless gold-armored soldiers stood guard, spaced every 10 steps in a formidable display of force. Seeing this, Kong Wudao casually asked, "Is something major happening in the Sun and Moon dynasty?" "Why the massive troop deployment?" Xuanhuan, leading the way, and the other ministers stopped short. Seeing Kong Wudao's question, Xuanhuan knew he couldn't brush it off again without risking the Son of God's displeasure. He was about to explain everything when a horrified cry pierced the air. "Report!" A soldier in purple mansion realm armor burst from the palace, his face etched with terror. Xuanhuan frowned, snapping, "Can't you see we have honored guests visiting the Sun and Moon divine dynasty? Is this any way to behave?" But the soldier remained panicked, fear overwhelming him. He stumbled and knelt before Kong Wudao and Xuanhuan. Head bowed, his voice trembling, he stammered, "Your Majesty, the front lines have fallen. The 300,000-strong army sent to reinforce Beiliang is completely wiped out. Our dynasty's champion, Ho Zhang is dead. Beheaded by the rebels." The word struck Xuanhuan and his ministers like a thunderbolt. They were stunned, reeling as if trapped in a nightmare. How could this be? That army of 300,000 was the elite of the Sun and Moon divine dynasty. And Zhang Wuji, the champion, was their most celebrated general, undefeated in countless campaigns. Now, he had led an army of 300,000 to utter annihilation, dying on the battlefield. The news was impossible to accept. They had expected news of victory from Zhang Wuji. Instead, hours later, they received word of complete and utter defeat. Kong Wudao, hearing this, raised an eyebrow, thinking, "According to what I know, the person who defeated the Sun and Moon dynasty is likely the so-called Chosen One. Interesting. It seems this Chosen One is a skilled military leader." This piqued his interest. Back in the Age of Destruction, at 13, he was placed in a time-space restricted zone for training. He led armies on expeditions until he was 16. In those 3 years, he fought countless battles, mastering the art of war. His armies were never defeated. Now, someone had annihilated the Sun and Moon dynasty's 300,000-strong army and killed their champion. He wanted to see this person's abilities firsthand. How could this happen? Xuanhuan, unable to contain his fury, roared, 300,000 troops, wiped out in less than 2 hours. Could Chu Tian be aided by some kind of supernatural force? Remembering Kong Wudao's presence, Xuanhuan suppressed his outburst, took a deep breath, and bowed deeply. "I apologize for this unseemly display, Son of God. The situation is as follows." Xuanhuan explained everything without holding back. After hearing the full story, a playful smile touched Kong Wudao's lips. This guy Chu Tian was the classic underdog destined for greatness. Hunted relentlessly by the Sun and Moon god dynasty, he was forced into a forbidden abyss. But just when everyone thought he was dead, he inexplicably resurrected, returning stronger than ever, and throwing the entire Sun and Moon divine dynasty into chaos. If no one in the dynasty could match him, the entire dynasty might collapse. His strategy was also clever, invading from the frontier, capturing key fortresses, and using a surround and conquer approach to slowly erode the Sun and Moon dynasty's territory. It was a frustrating and seemingly unsolvable tactic. After all, the main battlefield was within the Sun and Moon dynasty. Victory meant devastation and a setback of centuries. Defeat meant complete overthrow and regime change. Just then, a clear, melodic voice spoke. "Father, I have studied military strategy and led troops in several battles." Xia Chuli stepped forward, bowing to Xuanhuan. "The Sun and Moon dynasty is lacking suitable generals. I ask for your permission to lead the army and quell the rebellion in Beiliang." "No." Xuanhuan quickly refused. Although you've led some battles, this is a far more serious matter. The rebels are a raging inferno. If necessary, I'll seek help from our ancestors in the Imperial mausoleum. Even if we lose territory, it's better than risking your life. At least the dynasty's development will only be delayed. Xuanhuan doted on Xia Chuli. He cherished his daughter. He wouldn't let her risk herself. But father. Xia Chuli started to protest, but Kong Wudao interjected, I am also skilled in leading troops. Why not entrust the command to this son of God? I will personally quell this rebellion for you and your dynasty. Chapter 72 The army gathers together, 5 troops are enough. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Words dropped like a hammer, a wave of disbelief washed over the faces of the Sun and Moon dynasty's countless ministers and generals as they stared at Kong Wudao. What was that? The Son of God from the time and space restricted area, was actually offering to help their dynasty. The powerful figures of the Sun and Moon dynasty were completely stunned, even the geniuses from the time and space restricted area behind Kong Wudao were taken aback by this unexpected turn of events. They never imagined he'd get involved. Kong Wudao remained unfazed by the attention. He wasn't some selfless do-gooder. Self-interest always came first. For one thing, he was curious to meet Chu Tian, this supposed chosen one, just to break up the monotony. And if he could easily quell the rebellion threatening the Sun and Moon dynasty, well, combined with his status and the fact that he'd be saving the day, they'd owe him big time. Plus, with a few clever moves, he could bring the entire Sun and Moon dynasty under his control. Like the Chaos Holy Land, the Sun and Moon dynasty held a strategically vital position in both realms. If his time and space restricted area wanted to control these realms down the line, these two major powers would make perfect bases for launching armies and crushing any resistance, ultimately dominating the entire region. Ding. Destiny heroine Xia Chuli senses profound gratitude towards her master. Congratulations, master, for successfully increasing Xia Chuli's loyalty by 20%. She has lost 1,600 destiny points, leaving her with 4,800. Congratulations, master, for triggering a triple critical hit and gaining 4,800 destiny points. Xia Chuli's loyalty level, 40%. Kong Wudao was surprised by the system notification. He knew Xia Chuli was a bit strange, but this was off the charts. Just saying he'd stop the rebellion, and her loyalty jumps that much? What Kong Wudao didn't know was that Xia Chuli's heart had been racing since she heard his offer. She was fully aware he wasn't making a play for her. He was just doing what was in his own best interest, but even so, she couldn't help but be incredibly grateful. Coming from anyone else, she would have scoffed, maybe even accused them of trying to brown-nose, but coming from Kong Wudao, he had the power to completely crush the rebellion that threatened their dynasty. After a long silence, Xuanhuan and the other leaders of the Sun and Moon dynasty snapped out of their daze, their faces lighting up with joy. Xuanhuan bowed deeply to Kong Wudao. Thank you, Lord Wudao, for your help. Chu Tian's earlier display might have impressed a lot of people, but compared to Kong Wudao, it was like comparing a firefly to the sun. There was no comparison. The northern Yang region, a gruesome battlefield, littered with corpses and rivers of blood. The cold wind carried the stench of death, stirring up sand and dust as if the restless spirits were wailing in despair. Haha. So this is the famous champion of the Sun and Moon dynasty. Pathetic. Chu Tian, clad in a black robe, stood atop a grisly monument built from thousands of skulls, facing the wind. In his hand, he held a trophy that would never know peace, the head of Zhang Wuji, the champion marquis of the Sun and Moon dynasty. As for the Sun and Moon dynasty's so-called elite army of 300,000, he'd used their bones to build his twisted monument. After a mocking laugh, Chu Tian tossed the head aside, and dark energy rapidly spread outwards. Countless bones wrapped in this black energy twisted and contorted in unnatural ways, as if brought back to life. They stood up, cracking and creaking. This was Chu Tian's original ghostly power, the essence of his spirit body. He could resurrect the dead through dark magic, reanimating fallen soldiers on the battlefield. He would transform these corpses into his own undead army. This power, of course, was a gift from the great Undead Emperor. Yes, you have truly mastered the core of the Emperor's necromancy techniques. A cloud of black mist materialized behind Chu Tian, solidifying into the form of the Undead Emperor. With the Sun and Moon dynasties' 300,000 elite troops wiped out in the previous battle, they won't be launching any counterattacks anytime soon. We just need to seize the last fortress in northern Liang, and the entire region of the Sun and Moon dynasty will be ours. But the Undead Emperor kept one thought to himself. He'd sensed foreign auras entering the Sun and Moon dynasty's Imperial city. It gave him a bad feeling, but he wasn't too worried. After all, he had powerful backers from outside the territory, and he had Chu Tian to take the blame. Even if the Sun and Moon dynasty called in reinforcements, it wouldn't derail their plans in the end. Beneath the Sun and Moon dynasty's Imperial city, to better aid Kong Wudao, Xuanhuan issued an order, mobilizing 1 million soldiers. The Imperial city border teemed with soldiers. Countless troops in golden armor filled the air with a terrifying aura. Throughout the heavens and realms, most forces maintained their own armies. After all, endless immortal battles required vast forces, armies that could even hunt down emperors. Lord Son of God, these are 1 million of the finest troops I pulled back from the front lines. They are yours to command. Xuanhuan had completely abandoned his kingly demeanor. He offered a tiger talisman, crafted from divine realm materials, to Kong Wudao with the humility of a servant. Taking the tiger talisman, Kong Wudao said with a faint smile, I hear there are only 400,000 rebels in the Beiliang region. This king has given this son of God an army twice that size. Does this mean I have to rely on overwhelming numbers to win? Xuanhuan paled, frantically shaking his head. That's not what I meant at all. Please tell me what you need, Lord Son of God. Kong Wudao didn't dwell on it. The war with the Sun and Moon dynasty was beneath him. Perhaps it was because the enemy wasn't strong enough, or maybe because they were worried about wrecking the territory. The strongest commander on their side was only at the God-King level. They didn't even have a decent Saint Realm powerhouse, back in his day. Leading armies in the time and space restricted area, the lowest ranked soldiers were all at the Saint level, and the weakest commanders were quasi-emperors. When those armies clashed, stars shattered, universes collapsed, and the laws of reality crumbled. The elite troops offered to him by the Sun and Moon dynasty were an eyesore. This was nothing more than a small skirmish. 500,000 is too many. I only want the best of the best. Too many will just get in the way. An army of 150,000 will be enough. Chapter 73 Virtual God Realm. How is it different from waste? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hearing this, Xuanhuan and the others from the Sun and Moon dynasty were stunned. Wait, what? Kong Wudao thinks he can crush Beiliang with only 150,000 troops. Those rebels have 400,000 soldiers. Can he even pull that off? Then, Kong Wudao added, I'm in. But this comes at a price. Xuanhuan nodded respectfully. Of course. Whatever you need, if we can provide it, you've got it. After further review, Kong Wudao hand-picked the best 150,000 soldiers from their 500,000 strong army. These were hardened veterans, each one at least a first-level God King. They'd be easier to integrate into his strategies, and more likely to follow orders. This was the kind of army a leader needed. Below the Imperial city, the army stood ready. Iron horses, fluttering banners, and ancient ships hovered in the air. Standing before them, Kong Wudao faced the wind and declared, if you want to survive this war, if you want to win, you have to do one thing, obey my orders, no matter what. Understood. Understood. The Sun and Moon dynasty soldiers roared back, a thunderous wave of sound. Kong Wudao wasn't one of their own, but they weren't stupid. They could see the king's respect for him. This guy was someone important, way beyond their understanding, and though young, he radiated an icy aura, like someone who'd lived on the battlefield for years. Good. Let's go to war. Boom. Strange beasts roared, and divine birds sang. Countless blood-stained warships rose into the sky and plunged into the newly opened void passage. Meanwhile, in Beiliang, the 300,000 troops the Sun and Moon dynasty had sent were getting chewed up. Chu Tian's rebel army was overwhelming everything. With the force of a hurricane scattering leaves, they wiped out the remaining dynasty forces in Beiliang. Now, Chu Tian had 250,000 elite soldiers, plus 150,000 undead legions. Only one fortress stood between him and total victory. Standing before his army, Chu Tian looked like a conquering hero. Ha! Once I take that fortress, all of Baelyang will be mine. Give me time, and the whole Sun-Moon dynasty will fall into my hands. He even started thinking about the time-space anomaly so close to the dynasty. He remembered his father, the Duke, talking about it, and with his growing power, maybe he could conquer it. Just as Chu Tian was lost in his dreams. Report! A shout pierced the air, and a streak of light landed before Chu Tian. A guard bowed respectfully and said, "Spies report that the Sun and Moon dynasty has reorganized a large army and is heading towards Baelyang. They estimate around 150,000 soldiers." Chu Tian raised an eyebrow. They sent 300,000 soldiers, and he wiped them out. Now they're sending a mere 150,000. Are they just trying to get killed? Those old geezers in the dynasty must be losing it. Chu Tian shook his head, grinning. They're practically begging for it. If they wanted to die, he'd be happy to oblige. Moments later, boom. Dark clouds suddenly gathered overhead. A chilling pressure, accompanied by earth-shattering roars, rolled in from the horizon. Ancient warships appeared in the sky, stretching for miles, bearing the organized forces of the Sun and Moon dynasty, with cold, murderous intent in their eyes. What is? Chu Tian's eyes locked onto the figure in white standing at the bow of the lead ship. Divine mist swirled around him, obscuring him from view. Chu Tian could barely make out his features, and couldn't sense his aura, but when those eyes in the mist pierced through space and locked onto him, Chu Tian felt like he was being hunted by an ancient beast. His soul trembled, and his scalp crawled. He felt one thought: this person is extremely dangerous. Who is that? When did the Sun and Moon dynasty get someone like that? Could it be some forgotten prince? As Chu Tian wondered, Kong Wudao, standing at the ship's bow, noticed Chu Tian's gaze. He looked back. The system chimed, ding. The destined hero has appeared. Target marked, please review. Name, Chu Tian. Identity, eldest son of the Duke, undead inheritor. Cultivation, first level virtual god realm. Physique, netherworld undead body, preview. Skills, 9 nether dead spirit technique, Mingsha technique. Treasures, fire of the netherworld, demonic bone halberd, dead soul coffin. Destiny points, 9,000. Possible avenue fragments, avenue of the dead, avenue of halberds, avenue of the netherworld. Kong Wudao smiled wider. 9,000 destiny points, not bad. Too bad he's so weak. He died once, got reborn with a huge advantage, and he's still only in the virtual god realm. What a waste. Shaking his head, Kong Wudao brushed the thought aside. All troops, attack. Chapter 74, The armies collide and the whole line collapses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Almost as soon as Kong Wudao spoke, boom. 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 A barrage of earth-shattering blasts erupted from countless warships in the sky, slamming into Chu Tian's forces. Reacting quickly, Chu Tian yelled, formations. Defend. His rebels, battle-hardened as they were, responded swiftly, but after barely withstanding the initial barrage of divine light, Kong Wudao signaled his archers, who had already drawn and aimed. Fire. The order unleashed a storm, whoosh, whoosh, star, arrows ripped through the air, thick as stars, like a meteor shower. They tore through the void, obliterating huge swaths of land below. Boom. A shockwave of energy rolled out. City breakers. Keep firing. It wasn't over. Kong Wudao ordered massive bronze spears, each 100 feet long, to be activated and launched. These spears were designed to obliterate formations or cities. One shot could level a city hundreds of feet tall, but the rebel army was proving to be too weak, so different from what he expected. He didn't bother with excuses or military codes. A direct, overwhelming victory was preferable, normally requiring dozens of god kings to activate. Kong Wudao casually hoisted one of the massive spears with a single hand. Meanwhile, in the restricted time-space zone, Chu Tian's rebels, despite help from the emperor's son, were outnumbered and on the verge of collapse. Chu Tian himself was reeling from the onslaught. He hadn't expected such a sudden and ferocious attack. "All troops, follow me." As Chu Tian drew his sword, ready to lead a desperate charge, boom. An earth-shattering explosion ripped through the air. He felt a wave of terrifying power, tearing through reality and heading his way. He looked up and his pupils constricted. Several colossal bronze spears, glowing with silver light, were hurtling towards him, warping space itself. Godbreakers? Chu Tian gasped in disbelief. Activating even a single one of those required hundreds of powerful god kings and extensive preparation. How could this weakling launch several with such ease? The God-breakers, engraved with formations of destruction, turned the rebels' defenses into confetti. Boom. The spears smashed through everything, unleashing a cataclysmic wave. No. Screams of terror echoed as several city breakers slammed into the center of the rebel army like meteors. Countless soldiers were instantly vaporized by the shockwave of law. The land crumbled, kicking up thousands of feet of dust, swallowing Chu Tian's army whole. What? On the warship, Xia Chuli was stunned by what she witnessed. This was her first time on a battlefield. It was a brutal war, but this wasn't even a clash. Kong Wudao had annihilated a 400,000-strong army. She had expected a hard-fought battle, but it had become a one-sided massacre by the Wu Dao god's son. Kong Wudao was calmer. He preferred devastating strikes to lengthy maneuvers. Offense was the best defense. Charge! Kill them all! Kong Wudao commanded. The soldiers of the divine dynasty leaped from their warships, drawing swords and spears. Commanders led the 150,000 troops in a relentless tide against the remnants of the rebel force. Kill the rebels! The soldiers of the Sun and Moon divine dynasty moved like wolves among sheep. The previous attacks had decimated the rebels. The few survivors were paralyzed with fear. Before they could react, they were cut down by the advancing army of the Sun and Moon divine dynasty. Ahem. Get your swords. Fight or die. Chu Tian crawled from the wreckage, urging his men to regroup and counterattack. But their lines had been shattered. Their counterattack was feeble, but the fearless rebels quickly reorganized. They collided with the 150,000 troops of the Sun and Moon divine dynasty. The clash of steel, the roar of battle, and the spray of blood filled the air. Ha! An army of the dead. Kong Wudao raised an eyebrow. He could sense that this strange force was lifeless. He was confused and intrigued. How had Chu Tian made the dead fight for him? Kong Wudao wondered, could it be necromancy that he was interested? Necromancy was rare, and he had never faced an army of undead. Forget defense, charge! The command echoed. The 150,000 soldiers instantly shifted to an all-out offensive, charged forward without backing down, determined to win. Kill! The earth shook with the roar of war, amplified across the blood-soaked ground. The 150,000 soldiers of the Sun and Moon god dynasty abandoned all caution and charged. Fueled by their power, Chu Tian's forces had suffered terrible losses. They were caught off guard and disorganized. Now, under this insane assault, despite their superior numbers, they began to collapse. Chapter 75, Full Power, is that it? You are listening at novelfull.audio. What the hell? He watched his army get mowed down like grass. Chu Tian, fresh off a major victory, was stunned. His soul was reeling. Normally, a general facing a vastly superior force would play it safe, focusing on defense and waiting for an opening. Xuanhuan, the former champ of the Sun and Moon dynasty, used that strategy. He eventually found his chance, encircled his enemy, and wiped out the dynasty's entire 300,000 elite troops. But the army Kong Wudao led was clearly much smaller than his own, yet they weren't just attacking, they were launching a crazy, all-out assault. A mocking laugh cut through his thoughts. Huh, you're Chu Tian. I thought you'd be more interesting. Guess not. Chu Tian visibly shuddered, his head snapping up. Who are you? Somehow, several figures had appeared in the sky, a mix of men and women. They all looked incredibly young, and they radiated an aura that made his blood run cold. His eyes locked on one of the women, and his pupils shrunk. It was Xia Chuli, the Sun and Moon dynasty's eldest princess. But Xia Chuli was the apple of the dynasty's eye, the most beloved daughter of the Sun and Moon Lord. At the height of power, why was she hanging back like a maid? Especially the man in white, standing in front. His every move screamed nobility, divinity. Even without hearing them speak, he could feel the respect Xia Chuli and the others had for him from their slightest gestures. But then, remembering they were deep in his territory, Chu Tian sneered. "Humph. I don't know who you are, but coming this far into my army is a death wish. Get them. Kill these unknown bastards. Leave Xia Chuli alive. I can still use her." That the remaining rebel forces sprang into action, they converged, completely surrounding Kong Wudao and his group. Chu Tian figured Kong Wudao was some hired muscle, brought in by Xia Chuli. But he wasn't worried. With the number of fighters he had, he could not only bounce back, but crush them. He thought he was done for, but now they'd brought their heads to him, so he'd just have to accept the gift. "Brothers. The kid in front is the commander. That brat slaughtered so many of our own. Let's tear him apart and offer him up to our fallen brothers." Several leaders roared. Thousands of rebels charged, intent on wiping out Kong Wudao and his group. "You wanna die? How dare you act like this in front of the Son of God?" Before Kong Wudao could even twitch, the emperors beside him unleashed their power and struck. Boom! Terrifying energy erupted from their bodies. Countless visions appeared in the sky, and massive Dharma bodies materialized. The void trembled as the Dharma bodies attacked the surrounding rebels. Though their cultivation levels were lower than the commanders, these were emperor-level prodigies from the restricted zone, freaks among freaks, with monstrous combat power. The world seemed to turn inside out. Blazing divine flames roared, instantly vaporizing countless rebels. How can these guys be so strong? Chu Tian stared, speechless. He'd assumed Kong Wudao was the biggest threat. He never expected these young monks to be so powerful. And he'd overheard them call Kong Wudao the Son of God. Having only recently been resurrected, he was clueless about what was happening in the universe. He had no idea what Son of God even meant. "It's pretty dumb for a commander to lead a raid deep into enemy territory," Kong Wudao said, his voice dripping with amusement. "Unless, of course, the enemy is too weak to even matter." Chu Tian seethed. As the Duke of Xuanhuan's eldest son, he was one of the most talented people in the dynasty before he died, and after his resurrection, when he awoke the legendary netherworld undead body, his power only grew, and this guy had the nerve to say he was too weak to matter. The arrogance. Ha! You're asking for it. Undead, corrupting the land. Chu Tian roared, and the dark mist around him surged. A wave of undead energy burst out from him. The land touched by it became a pitch-black sea. Countless black ghost hands clawed and reached out. The Sea of Undead Disaster was one of the netherworld undead body's abilities. The blast of undead energy eroded the laws of heaven and earth, turning the area into a realm of the undead, and burying anyone caught inside. Chu Tian knew Kong Wudao was dangerous. A prolonged fight would be a disaster. Better to strike first and catch him off guard. Boom! Chu Tian's power surged. He was like a dark sun, radiating death. Master Chu Tian isn't just a great commander, he's almost unbeatable. Anyone who pisses him off is basically signing their own death warrant. The rebels cheered, seeing a glimmer of hope. Kong Wudao was the commander of the army of 150,000. If they could kill him, they'd win the war. All of Baoyang would be theirs. But then, a bored sigh cut through the noise. "This is your all-out attack, seriously. P.S. I wish all readers a happy Mid-Autumn Festival, happiness and good health. Thank you also for your great support. Chapter 76 Who gave you the courage to speak louder? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kong Wudao shook his head, looking bored. His face, handsome enough to belong to an immortal, showed clear disappointment. You call that move a physical magical power? Seriously? So lame. He took a step forward from where he floated, and his aura exploded. Boom, star, runes gathered, and the power of the laws swirling in the void coalesced behind him. It formed a divine gate, positioned at a nexus point of heaven and earth, capable of wielding immense power. the instant the Tongtian divine gate appeared, the entire sky went white. Now this is what I call a physical magical power. Time and space warped around him as he stepped forward, the currents of time materialized behind him. Before that power even landed, the death aura, carrying the most ominous spirit, was crushed like ants under a cloud, standing before the Tongtian divine gate. His black hair flowed freely, each strand radiating light like a god's arrival. Ant. With that word, he clapped his hand, boom, star, the massive divine gate to heaven burst open. A hand formed of time and space runes emerged, ripping through the void and slamming down on Chu Tian. The hand descended like a sacred mountain, filled with golden light like stars. Against that power, Chu Tian's attacks were useless. A terrifying sense of impending doom washed over him. Boom, star, the golden hand crashed down like a star falling to earth. The ground shattered like paper, exploding into dust. Boom, star, the roar was deafening. Beneath Kong Wudao's power, a huge area collapsed, leaving a dark pit. Cough, cough, how? Chu Tian lay in the pit, a bloody wreck. His aura was weak, and disbelief filled his face. He'd awakened the netherworld soul body. Its physical strength was comparable to a Xiaocheng's ancient holy body. Yet he couldn't even withstand a single blow. Only the defensive measure left by the Undead Emperor had barely kept him alive. Otherwise, he'd be gone for good. Ding! Chu Tian's spirit has been shaken. 1,000 destiny points deducted, leaving 8,000. Congratulations. Double critical hit. 2,000 destiny points gained. The battlefield fell silent. The fighting stopped as both armies stared, pale with shock. The rebels were especially terrified. Chu Tian, their invincible champion, had been crushed by a single attack. Above, Kong Wudao raised an eyebrow. That aura, it was like protection and blessing, from someone else. Is someone powerful backing this kid? Someone at the emperor level. He suspected an emperor because he had used some of the Qiyuan spacetime divine eye's power. Even a holy realm expert's protection wouldn't have blocked that attack. Only someone at the emperor level could have a chance. Plus, the mark hidden in Chu Tian's body had a strong death aura. It blocked his attack and helped Chu Tian regain life force. Chu Tian, he's too strong. You can't beat him. Don't be stubborn. Run! That the Undead Emperor's voice echoed in Chu Tian's mind. Kong Wudao's attack had revealed his power. Chu Tian couldn't win. Not his opponent. I don't believe it. Chu Tian wiped the blood from his mouth and ignored the Undead Emperor. He had died once already. What was there to fear? Besides, the netherworld soul body had endless vitality. It could absorb energy from the battlefield and the world itself to heal. Even if he was blown to bits, a single drop of blood would let him resurrect. Boom! Chu Tian gritted his teeth, forcing his blood essence to burn, unleashing an even more terrifying undead aura. The dark aura around him changed, turning scarlet, creating an even more ominous feeling. His brush with death had given him new insight. His netherworld undead body had undergone another transformation. Chu Tian was surprised. The pressure had become an opportunity. Ha ha ha. I should thank you. I couldn't have broken through without you. Chu Tian regained his confidence. Now, I'll show you. Boom! Kong Wudao, already out of patience, struck again. The golden hand descended like a sacred mountain. It was even more powerful than before. Space itself twisted and groaned under the force. Chu Tian and the area were crushed to dust. Kong Wudao looked at the wreckage with disdain. What gave you the right to be so loud? But he was confused. The system hadn't confirmed Chu Tian's death. He knew about the netherworld's undead body. It was practically unkillable. A scrap of meat was enough to regenerate. His attack must have left a tiny amount behind. No problem. I'll just have to hit him a few more times. He couldn't trigger double critical hits with the finishing blow, but Kong Wudao didn't care. He'd been hunting destined ones for fun. Chu Tian hadn't provided any enjoyment. In fact, he'd dared to talk back. He needed to be erased from existence. Chapter 77 The Undead Emperor has arrived, a big shot from outside the realm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As for not absorbing the netherworld soul body, he wasn't losing any sleep over it. Sure, it made someone tough to kill, but it only worked with necromancy. It wasn't his thing. Lost in thought, Kong Wudao unleashed a barrage of terrifying magic, manipulating time and space behind him. Boom. 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 Everyone watched, horrified, as laws of light slammed into the spot where Chu Tian had been. The blinding light melted everything, obliterating what was already an abyss. The destruction was so complete, there wouldn't be a trace of Chu Tian left. Even the laws of that area were likely gone, leaving a total vacuum. Stop! A furious voice boomed across the world. Boom! A terrifying force, carried by a wave of black clouds, surged in from the horizon. Kong Wudao frowned. Looking up, he sensed an undead aura within the clouds, far stronger than Chu Tian's, along with a hint of imperial power. Even before it arrived, it was messing with the laws of nature. Looks like Chu Tian's backer, that Emperor Realm powerhouse, finally decided to show his face. With this sudden twist, the bloody battlefield went silent. Everyone stared at the sky. What is that? Crimson fire erupted from the clouds, forming a dark, skeletal figure, the Undead Emperor. Hope surged through the rebel ranks. It's the Emperor. The Emperor's here. The Undead Emperor was a core leader among the rebels. Their success was thanks to his secret support. They revered him as their emperor, a figure as powerful as anyone in the Sun and Moon dynasty. A real emperor. The leader of the Sun-Moon divine dynasty was terrified, his legs almost giving way. Their intel said the rebels were just princes and kings, at best supreme realm. How could they have an emperor? We're done for. Totally done. Unlike the others, the Undead Emperor was furious. It was all Chu Tian's fault, that loser who just had to provoke Kong Wudao, forcing his hand. He might be an emperor, but he was a fake. He'd only reached this level thanks to those outsiders. If he landed here, the Sun and Moon dynasty would notice, and his plans would be exposed. But if he didn't show up, Chu Tian would be crushed, and he'd lose his chance to take over his body and be reborn. He'd set Chu Tian up to awaken the netherworld soul body. He'd been grooming Chu Tian as his next vessel. Now, Kong Wudao had reduced him to dust. He could regenerate with the netherworld undead body, but the energy it would take was irreplaceable. The Undead Emperor was livid. He'd poured everything into that new body. You're asking for it. How dare you mess with my plans? Boom. A terrifying aura radiated from the Undead Emperor, like a tsunami sweeping the world. Even the other Emperor-level figures in the restricted areas felt it, their expressions changing. They hadn't expected a strange emperor to appear out of nowhere. Stay out of this. Kong Wudao spoke, not caring. To a point in the void, he was talking to the Shadow Yama Supreme, who was hiding nearby. Yin Supreme wasn't an emperor, but as his protector, he had imperial weapons from the time and space restricted area. A supreme realm cultivator using imperial weapons could easily beat the Undead Emperor to a pulp, but Kong Wudao wanted to handle this himself. It wasn't every day you saw someone lose their body and still become an emperor as a dead soul. He'd keep him around for laughs. The Undead Emperor took Kong Wudao's words a different way. He smirked, looking down. Oh, you don't want any help? You destroyed the body I was cultivating and almost ruined everything. Kneel and beg 10 times, and maybe I'll let you live. Kong Wudao had been shielding himself from the start. Even a powerful emperor couldn't identify him, and the Undead Emperor certainly couldn't. Kong Wudao seemed strong, and clearly wasn't from the Sun and Moon divine dynasty, but so what? He had powerful allies from beyond the territory. Was he more afraid of this kid than his own backers? Plus, he'd used a special spell to seal off this area. The old guys from the Sun and Moon divine dynasty wouldn't notice him for at least a few minutes. And that was more than enough time to crush his opponent. Chapter 78 The Imperial soldiers arrive. Suppress the Undead Emperor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You think you're so tough. Silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the memory of Kong Wudao's soft laughter. It was completely unexpected. Kong Wudao wasn't losing it at all. That smile playing on his lips stayed cool as ever, but the whole vibe had shifted, a chilling pressure radiating from him. Even the Undead Emperor frowned, sensing something was seriously wrong. before he could even speak. Boom. Kong Wudao unleashed a terrifying burst of power, slamming down a golden palm. But it wasn't aimed at the Undead Emperor, it was crashing straight into the rubble behind him. You little punk! How dare you! The Undead Emperor roared, ready to jump in. Too late. Kong Wudao's palm, crackling with the law of destruction, slammed into Chu Tian, right as he was trying to pull himself together. Boom! The destructive energy surged like lava, completely obliterating Chu Tian and the surrounding area. Chu Tian didn't even have a shred of flesh left, he was gone, body and soul, just poof, ding. Master has eliminated Chu Tian, the chosen one, and successfully acquired his remaining 7,000 destiny points. Was this trash your little pet project, old-timer? Kong Wudao finally looked up, a playful smirk twisting his lips. Oops. Guess I got spooked and my hand slipped. All that hard work down the drain. The Undead Emperor was stunned. Maybe it was the disrespect, Kong Wudao calling him, an emperor, old trash. Or maybe he just couldn't believe it. Kong Wudao straight up iced Chu Tian right in front of him. Insolent. Rage boiled over, and the Undead Emperor's dark aura exploded. Rumble. Jagged bolts of black lightning tore through the void, a web of doom across the sky. The pressure was immense, a suffocating sense of dread crushing everyone's hearts. The Sun and Moon Divine Dynasty army, unsure of Kong Wudao's true power, felt utter despair. Sure, Kong Wudao was important, but he was still just a kid. No matter how many tricks he had up his sleeve, there was no way he could take down an emperor, right? Good. The Undead Emperor's aura intensified, the world plunged into darkness, a black wind rising, but before the Undead Emperor could unleash his power and crush Kong Wudao, a burst of laughter stopped him cold. You call yourself an emperor, you dirty thing? You don't even have an emperor's body. Kong Wudao's sneer deepened. You're a freaking monster, and you think you deserve that title? A real emperor forged an invincible body, he's just a skeleton. How dare a nobody like Kong Wudao mock him? Before the Undead Emperor could explode, Kong Wudao's voice cut through the air. Ing Yen, keep this guy busy, but don't kill him. Just rough him up a bit. Hum. Suddenly, the world, choked by the deathly haze, lit up. Rivers of light, the very essence of the universe, poured from cracks in the void. In an instant, the black clouds of death dissipated, the sky pure white. The Undead Emperor felt a wave of danger wash over him. What is? He looked up, the sky above him shattered like a mirror, crisscrossed with cracks under a force. Click. The void ripped open, a pagoda, covered in runes and radiating golden light, appeared. An Emperor-level weapon. The Undead Emperor paled. He had no idea this kid had a backer who could wield Imperial arms. But he reacted fast, trying to defend himself. Boom. His Imperial aura flared. Death Soul Flag, come forth. With a wave of his hand, space tore open, revealing a massive, swirling abyss. Endless ghosts swarmed from the depths of hell, forming a dark red battle flag under the Undead Emperor's command. The Death Soul banner absorbed souls, turning them into destructive energy. It was his signature weapon, during the earlier battles with the Sun and Moon Dynasty. Chu Tian had secretly gathered souls for the Undead Emperor, feeding them to the Death Soul banner. Sensing the power of the pagoda, the Undead Emperor poured everything he had into the Undead flag. Bury the heaven souls. He swung the Death Soul flag. Boom. A wave of death surged into the sky. It became a dark, raging river, crashing toward the pagoda. Roar. In the churning waves, grotesque ghosts opened their mouths, ready to devour everything. Dragging the world into the abyss of death. Humph. Does he really think that weird thing makes him an emperor? Ing Yen didn't care at all. As one of the top supreme beings, he was naturally powerful. The Undead Emperor was an oddity. Not only had he become an emperor through unorthodox means, he failed to create an emperor's body. He was at best comparable to a quasi-emperor. The imperial weapon was merely in his hands, not to mention the weapon itself, which was an imperial weapon of a top emperor in the time and space restricted area that had its own spiritual intelligence. He only needed to awaken it, and the imperial soldiers would kill the enemy invaders on their own. Hum. The light radiating from the pagoda intensified, as thousands of laws surged, the 9-story pagoda expanded, becoming a sacred mountain that covered the sky. The top spun, emitting a chaotic light. With a deafening boom, the Xuanhuan pagoda slammed down. The void shattered and collapsed, countless undead ghosts were blasted to dust. How can this be? The Undead Emperor's face contorted, his attacks were useless. Boom! Light poured down, like a god descending, obliterating everything. The Undead Emperor was powerless, crushed by the pagoda. Silence fell, the sudden turnaround was unbelievable. An emperor was snuffed out before he even got started. Even scarier. The person was working for Kong Wudao. Just how deep was the restricted area's power? Chapter 79. The Second Emperor arrives. Meet the son of God Wu Dao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rumble. Just then, another terrifying wave of power radiated from the horizon, along with bursts of divine light. 2 massive rifts tore open in space, and 2 powerful figures emerged. Both emanated an imperial presence even stronger than the Undead Emperors. As soon as they appeared, thousands of divine lights shot out like stars. These were the formidable emperors of the Sun and Moon dynasty. They had sensed something amiss the moment the pagoda's imperial energy clashed with the Undead Emperor. Revived from their imperial mausoleum, they rushed here. Ancestors! We pay our respects. Xia Chuli and the Sun and Moon dynasty monks quickly bowed. The arrival of the Sun and Moon dynasty's mighty emperors shocked and surprised them. What's happened here? One of the emperors asked coldly. They had just awakened from their deep slumber and hurried over without knowing the full story. Lord Ancestor, it's like this. Xia Chuli quickly stepped forward to explain. After a few minutes, they understood the situation. The 2 great emperors stared in disbelief at the white-robed figure under the pagoda, the Son of God from the restricted spacetime. Kong Wudao. How could such a heaven-defying figure appear in their Sun and Moon dynasty? Their eyes shifted to the radiant pagoda, which inspired even them with fear. A sense of dread washed over them. Careful to maintain proper etiquette, the 2 hurried to stand before Kong Wudao. I am Xuanhuan, of the Sun and Moon dynasty, and I greet the son of Wu Dao. Xia Kunlun, of the Sun and Moon dynasty, greets the son of Wu Dao. Thank you for your help in quelling the rebellion. That the surrounding monks gasped. The emperors hadn't even used their imperial titles, but addressed him by name. It was the ultimate sign of respect for Kong Wudao. It's nothing, Kong Wudao said with a slight nod. However, I want to take this so-called Undead Emperor with me. The Undead Emperor had been arrogant in front of him. Killing him outright would be too easy. He wanted to take him back and show him what true eternity really meant. The 2 Sun and Moon dynasty emperors were stunned. They knew who the Undead Emperor was. He was related to their royal family, sharing a bloodline. However, after being expelled, he inexplicably turned to evil, attempting to overthrow the Sun and Moon dynasty countless times. His magic was bizarre, and every attempt to capture him had failed. Now, the Undead Emperor, who had given them so much trouble, was in Kong Wudao's hands. Xuanhuan quickly said, of course, Lord Son of God, do as you wish. That they wanted to learn the Undead Emperor's secrets, but they wouldn't dare challenge Kong Wudao. The commander is dead. The Emperor is gone too. That the rebels witnessed Tianshan and the Undead Emperor being suppressed by Kong Wudao. They were stunned, their minds struggled to comprehend what had happened. They knew how powerful the Undead Emperor was. To the rebels, he was an immortal god. But this god had been suppressed by someone who appeared to be Kong Wudao's subordinate. Their emperor hadn't even lasted a single move. With Tianshan and the Undead Emperor defeated, the rebellion was over. Kong Wudao wasn't interested in leading troops to suppress the remaining rebels. The 2 emperors understood. They left a group to clean up the battlefield and personally escorted Kong Wudao back to the Sun and Moon dynasty's imperial city. Unseen by the others, Xia Chuli gazed at Kong Wudao in a daze. Recalling his outstanding leadership and near-invincible presence, her heart pounded. She had never seen anyone as extraordinary as Kong Wudao. If I could only follow someone like him. At that moment, the system's announcement echoed in Kong Wudao's mind. Ding! The destined heroine Xia Chuli admires you. Her taming level has increased by 30%. 2,400 destiny points have been deducted, leaving her with 2,400 points. Congratulations! You've triggered a double critical hit, gaining 4,800 destiny points. The opponent's taming level is 70%. Kong Wudao smirked. He suspected Xia Chuli had a strange obsession. Without him doing anything, her taming level increased by 30%. Is she trying to seduce me in her own mind? That the Sun and Moon dynasty was shocked that Kong Wudao had not only suppressed the Baoyang rebellion, but also defeated Chu Tian and the Undead Emperor. Is the son of Wudao that strong? I thought the rebellion would last a month, but he resolved it in half a day. And, he even had the Undead Emperor, who's been giving our dynasty headaches, suppressed. The son of Wudao is a blessing to our Sun and Moon dynasty. That the dynasty cheered. Even though Kong Wudao wasn't one of their own, the monks of the Sun and Moon dynasty revered him. To express their gratitude, the royal family held a grand banquet in his honor. The central hall bustled with the most esteemed cultivators of the Sun and Moon dynasty. Kong Wudao, their honored guest, was seated in a place of higher status than the current ruler. Everyone, the Sun and Moon dynasty was able to quell the rebellion because of the son of Wudao. Xuanhuan stood up, raised his glass to Kong Wudao, and said, "Thank you, Lord Son of God, for your generous actions. The Sun and Moon dynasty can't thank you enough." "Thank you, Lord Son of God." The ministers of the Sun and Moon dynasty raised their glasses, offering their respect. Kong Wudao simply nodded. He tasted the wine, indifferent to his surroundings. The affairs of the Sun and Moon dynasty were concluding, but Xia Chuli was still 30% away from being fully tamed. Should I find a reason to suppress her too? Seeing Kong Wudao's absent expression, the high-level officials panicked, wondering if the banquet wasn't to his liking. Before Xuanhuan could speak, a beautiful figure stood up and moved in front of Kong Wudao. She bowed respectfully and asked, "Lord Son of God. Can Chuli become your follower, Lord Son of God? P.S. Happy National Day, everyone." Chapter 80. As the Son of God, you must learn how to handle it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The room went silent the moment she spoke. Everyone's eyes snapped to Xia Chuli. The Sun and Moon dynasty ministers especially looked like their eyeballs were about to pop out of their heads. As the eldest princess, Xia Chuli was practically royalty in the Sun and Moon dynasty. Now, in broad daylight, she was publicly declaring she wanted to become Kong Wudao's follower. The shock was palpable. "Chuli, you." Her father, Xuanhuan, was stunned speechless. He knew his daughter's personality. As the most remarkable talent in the Sun and Moon dynasty, she had her pride. Now she was saying she'd become someone's follower. It was shattering everything he valued. Xia Chuli didn't seem to notice the shock around her. She kept her hands respectfully clasped and repeated loudly, "I'll do anything to follow the Son of God." That she'd been preparing for this moment. If she didn't seize this banquet, she might never get another chance. Her words plunged the already silent room into an even deeper stillness. Everyone was dumbfounded, their throats dry, eyes wide, unable to utter a single word. Even the emperors and disciples from the time and space forbidden zone were surprised, exchanging confused glances. They had no idea the princess from the Sun and Moon dynasty was such a fan of their Son of God. "Chuli. This is outrageous." Reacting, Xuanhuan hurried to take his daughter away. He knew how esteemed Kong Wu was. With the time and space forbidden zone's resources, Kong Wudao didn't need to look for followers outside. The zone had been around forever, full of geniuses. Why would he need his daughter to pledge loyalty? "Be my follower." Kong Wudao's lips curved slightly. He knew Xia Chuli, the destined heroine, had a quirky personality, but he hadn't expected her to come on this strong. Interesting. Still, he suspected she had ulterior motives. She was probably attracted to his status as the time and space forbidden zone Son of God. The Sun and Moon dynasty was right next door. If she became his follower, she wouldn't have to worry about being destroyed by the forbidden zone. Kong Wudao was right. Xia Chuli's determination to follow Kong Wudao wasn't just about his charisma. She was thinking about the Sun and Moon dynasty's interests. Becoming a follower of Kong Wudao was a huge opportunity for her and the entire dynasty. "Yes. I beg Wudao God's son, give Chuli a chance. Xia Chuli kept her hands clasped, repeating, if the Son of God is worried, I'll swear on my cultivation that I will never betray the Son of God. Xia Xuanhuan subconsciously grabbed her hand, glancing at Kong Wudao. Now he understood what his daughter was up to. Silence. Kong Wudao sat there, lazily sipping his wine, not answering, making the atmosphere even more tense. Everyone here was important in the Sun and Moon dynasty, but right now, their every move felt controlled by Kong Wudao. They barely dared to breathe. Finally, a cool, indifferent voice broke the silence. You have talent. But you're too weak. You're not worthy of being my follower. The Sun and Moon dynasty officials felt their hearts drop. This was unexpected. Not worthy. Xia Chuli's face paled, her eyes glazed over. She'd imagined countless scenarios, but never this. She bit her lip, her beautiful eyes turning gray with disappointment, a hint of tears forming. She looked fragile, like a delicate flower in the wind. Suppressing the pain, she whispered, I understand. Lord Son of God. I was being presumptuous. She was good, but compared to the time and space Forbidden Zone's top talents, she was lacking, especially compared to their Son of God. She smiled bitterly and turned to leave when Kong Wudao spoke again. Your cultivation is at the Dao Palace level, right? When you reach the false god realm, come find me in the time and space Forbidden Zone. What? Xia Chuli snapped her head up, staring at Kong Wudao in disbelief. He sat high up, his eyes calm as an ancient well, and with a wave of his hand, a storage ring floated over to her. Since you want to be my follower, your cultivation can't be too weak. Consider these cultivation resources an advance payment. The resources in the ring were nothing special, but they were a good way to win people over. Everyone from the Sun and Moon dynasty was stunned. Their minds went blank. The reversal was so sudden, no one saw it coming. Kong Wudao's eyes were calm. Everything was under control. People were strange creatures, things that came too easily were never appreciated. He wasn't just putting Xia Chuli down, he was manipulating her, making her dance to his tune, easier to control. Making her understand that to be his follower, she had to dedicate everything from the beginning.